Today's guest is a personal trainer with 24 years of experience coaching people all over the world. He is a former bodybuilder and rugby player. Among that, he has also written 3 books on sports, fitness, and mindset, including his latest book, The Grand Unified Theory of Weight Loss. I'm very grateful to spend time with the fitness expert, Ben Wilson. Grand Unified Theory of Body Transformation. What is that in a nutshell?
Well, this is what I was trying to work out. What my question ultimately was, what would it take for any one person? So if you think about the most lazy person you know, or somebody who hates health and fitness, someone who's never done exercise, what would it take for that person to turn into the fittest person you know, the most fitness freak or whatever it might be? And the question is, how would that process happen? So in the title of my book, The Grand Unified Theory of Weight Loss, the basics, Grand Unified Theory comes from physics, where they're trying to get a theory to basically explain the whole of the universe. So my slight pun on that was, what if I could explain everything around changing the body and transformation? And that's basically what I've been working on for years now. And that's what I'm trying to pull together. And the idea is it's numerous factors are simultaneously working upon you. So the idea is, everyone focuses on what to do, knowledge. Well, that's only one element. The other element is, do you have any motivation? So in that example of the person who wants to become super fit, if you actually chat to them, they probably have, very low motivation or goal to want to change that way. They'll have huge blocks about their belief, like they won't believe it's possible. So, if you don't believe something's possible, you're not even going to take a step in that right direction. And then there's other factors that are in, like, you cannot forget about your prior conditioning. And like a lot of trainers go wrong here. They go, I've done like bodybuilding shows. They'll be like, what was your plan? I'm like, my plan's on my website. You won't follow it. It's like, you're not the kind of person who could follow it. And likewise, personal trainers give exercise programs. Well, I was the fastest kid in school. I've had probably 15,000 positive exercise experiences in my life. I meet people who've only had 40 bad ones, and that's all at PE in school. So like, you can't forget about where you've come from. That's part of your conditioning. And then of course, like stress, like you might know what to do, you can stick to it, but the moment stress comes, it's gone. So that's another element that's working on us. And also we've got, like, people underestimate the environment. So we always think about, motivation. We go David Goggins, let's just do it. But like, what's around you is a huge part of motivation. And there's a reason why. Look at professional athletes who do solo events, runners, triathletes. They don't train on their own. They train in packs of teams. They have camps, they have coaches, because you need that sort of environment around you. So the idea of this Grand Unified Theory was, these are the different sort of factors. They're all interplaying. How does that come about in the real world? And how do we, if I want to make the transformation, then what do I need to address to go forwards? Because all people do, one of the areas of the transformation is plans, but that's just one element. So if every time I get stressed I eat, or every time I'm happy I eat, I don't know how much a plan will help, because you shouldn't be eating that chocolate bar, or if all your social events are around food and drink, or what am I saying? Don't be sociable for 2 months, or, so it's, do you see what I mean? This is where a lot of people sort of get in trouble. They just go down to plans. Now, of course, some people just don't know what they're doing, and they need to know. But the reality is there are all these different factors, and that's ultimately what you're going to do to sort of, get into a thing. So yes, if it's genuine, you're focused and somebody's watching this and they've got a new plan, go into it. But you got to think, unless that's going to get some fundamental change somewhere else in that cycle, you're going to sort of probably end up with the way you started. And this is what the stats show. 95% of diets don't work. Most people regain stuff. Most people don't stick to habits. And that's the process we're trying to do. How do I get a change? Because this is all I really cared about was long-term change. It's not, you see loads of great transformations, but does it stick long term? And most of them don't, or most people don't, keep that fitness change, 4 months, 6 months. So this is ultimately what we're trying to work at. So
why do most of these transformations don't stay? Like if you achieved something and you spent 6 months being very motivated and you got to the results you want, why is it that most diets stop and you kind of bounce back afterwards?
Well, I think fundamentally you haven't changed like who you are and those real deep patterns. So you have connections to like lots of behaviors, and the idea is we're trying to automatically change you so that you naturally, say, exercise, for example. So let's say I've never run before and I do 2 runs this week, and I say, look guys, I'm a runner. I'd be like, you're not quite a runner. You've done a great week of 2 runs. Well done. But then if you say, well, I've done 2 runs a week for 4 months, you're like, okay, well now you're going places, but that's still, that's not long enough. And I was 2 runs for 4 months, 16, that's 30 repetitions. Well, habits are somewhere between 20 to 70 plus as far as that goes. But you also got, you haven't got in there other strategies of what might happen if you got injured. And this is where a lot of people come. They are quite good, then they get injured. Or they get quite good, then they get stressed. Or they do go and then they change jobs and now they can't run at lunchtime. You know, so some people's new habits are not as robust as they could be. And when I'm training people, I don't get too caught up by them getting results straight there and then. You're like, okay, great, they're doing it. But I want to say, okay, hold on. Has this person learned to run in the morning in this example? No, every single run is at 6 p.m. at night. Well, what if something changes at night? You know, it could be good. You get a partner and now you have to come home and have dinner together.
And that's the environment aspect you were talking about earlier,
environment,
right?
and the connection. So basically running at 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. isn't the same. I remember the first time I exercised at 9 a.m. I was like a zombie going, oh, so when I was doing my personal training course, I was like, oh my God, what's happening here? This is crazy. And then the first time I exercised at 8 a.m., I was like, this is crazy. 7 a.m., this is crazy. You know, so you would train it. So the idea would be, I want those people to learn how to do things in the running example. You know, why would say to stick to running in different environments? And this is the same in, say, body change transformations. You can be very good for 6 months. You can be in a good place, but then have I learned to not socialize? I had this one friend, she was in good shape, and then she got a boyfriend, gained 15 kilograms, something like that. And that's because, and then you see the posts, it's like, oh yes, me and boyfriend having pizza, me and boyfriend bought me chocolate, and it's like, you might actually be very good at losing body fat when you're single, but your sort of brain pattern, your habit pattern when you're in a relationship isn't conducive to that. And then whenever there's a change in your life, you've got an opportunity. So if you get a new partner, it could be actually, we're really healthy. We go to the gym together, and my fitness since meeting my new partner is amazing. And the same when you break up, you could, go on Revenge Body, as the TV show that was, and you're like, watch me. Or of course you go the other way. You get a new partner and you just eat every night. You break up with a partner, you're down and depressed, you don't
binge
move.
Eat.
They can go either way. And the point being, but this is the same at all levels. If you have a change of job, obviously you have a kid, if the kids leave the home to go to university, it can go both ways. And it's just seen, do I react to that sort of thing? So
that's interesting. So what if, because I think a lot of things here also revolve around what a person's priority is. So if a person wanted to, let's say a scenario, gets into a good relationship, and that the motivation behind training was that.
Yeah.
And then they got into a relationship and their motivation obviously drops because of it. But if they want to stay healthy, but they lose that motivation, I assume it's you have to find a new reason to do it. And not only do you have to adapt with the new environment, but you also have to find I guess the motivation to do it, right?
Totally. This happens not just in that sense, in a lot of people, best time they ever do is they run the marathon, they never run it again.
Yeah.
That's the peak of their running, and it's you do have to redefine what you're sort of doing. So you got two things. You got say the pattern of what do I do in a relationship. Also you got the negotiation of how do I, she's saying, oh, he's saying I want to go to dinner. You're saying I don't. That's another negotiation you sort of have to have. But yeah, you have to redo, and you get this a lot, when people are older, they don't, older, been married for 10 years.
Yeah.
Do they really care about the six pack? Probably not. It's that's not the motivation too. But then maybe at that age, because when you're 24, you might care about the six pack. When you're 44, you might actually care about your blood work data, your health data. You might be thinking, okay, yeah, I do have kids. I want to live to so maybe you
mobility,
need different
longevity, those kinds of things, right?
So you need to, as you say, re-weight that sort of thing. And I've often found that a lot of struggle when people are very close to their goal, they come to see me, say their goal 70 kilograms and they're 73. Nothing's really going to change in their life. So it's sometimes you think, well, that should be easy. They're so close. But actually, a lot of times they don't get that oomph because nothing, you're like, what's going to change? And they're like, oh, no, I want a 6. And you're like, you want it 2 out of 10, It's it's trying to find that reason. And sometimes, by the way, it doesn't have to be a reason. As in, you can say, I just want to do it for the mere sake of achieving it. Because that could be why do people climb a mountain? Well, I want to climb a mountain. It's okay, well, and you can do the same with goals. You don't have to logically have a justification. If there's something that means to you, you can say, no, if I did this would mean this. I'm just going to do it in that sense. Now, coming back to the thing earlier about the equation, if you love everything you do, you don't even need to have a goal. And this is, I think, some people miss. If I just say I love the feeling of fasting, whenever I get stressed, I stop eating, go for a run, and I love working out with my mates in the gym, you can guarantee that person's going to be in shape without having any fitness goals, without anything. And this is that trade-off is the more you hate the behaviors you have to do, the more motivated you're going to need to be. And the more you love the behaviors you have to do, the less motivated you need to be. And some of the part of that earlier question of why do people not keep it is, have they fundamentally changed so they're loving everything they do? You know, like I'm telling people they should be moving every day just to feel good for their brain, for their body. Nothing to do with like how to look in the mirror. You know, your body is designed to move every day. We obviously now live in the sedentary world where, well, we don't have to do anything. We can literally get a taxi, can order some food in here. You know, like you don't need to move anymore.
Yeah.
But you will never feel as good as you could in that way, because like an element of like feeling good is just pure body. It could be 25, 50%. You could argue over the debate, but like literally, if you don't move, there's no way you can feel as good. And you could literally win the lottery. You could, yeah, you'll be buzzing for a day, but like you need to move the body. You're designed to move, you know.
I think a lot of people that don't do like sports from young age never really like learn that part.
Okay.
A lot of people that I know that play football or are into just like running or any kind of sports, tennis, they get very attracted to like a range of sports, because the moment they stop sports because the environment changes, like they get to university or they find a job, they start, for example, not liking the job, but actually the reason that they're unhappy is not because of the new job, but because they do less sports. And so then they get back to being attracted to finding a way to get some kind of sport. If it's not possible to play football because they're working all that time, they get into running, or paddle has been very big. So, but then on the other side, people that have never really been into sport from a young age, it would be great to like for a lot of people to get that realization that incorporating sport feels good, not just in the moment of doing sport, but just you feel better. Your mind is clearer, you're thinking faster, and all that stuff, right?
Oh yeah, well I've been moaning for years that I think PE teachers at school put more people off sport than they encourage people. And if I was in charge of schools, which I'm not, then what I would do is basically I'd separate the school. I'd say, right, who are the competitive kids who are good at sport and want to go over there? And then send them in that corner and they could all kick the heck out of each other and run around like lunatics. I'd say, everyone else, I'm going to teach you how to enjoy exercise. And then I wouldn't have any of this pain, you know, like you don't need to like be in loads of pain, collapsing on the floor. Like that's not part of sport. I don't need to shout at you. There's loads of ways to move. You know, you can literally like go rock climbing. You can go for a quick walk up a hill. Like you would teach those kids to how to enjoy movement, and you let all the good kids, because you said they're going to play sport later on, and then as you said, when they get to work, they might play paddle instead of football. It's easier, but they've got the positive experiences of exercising. You know, and I'm always on the athletics track, and you see the kids, they're getting shouted at. They got kids have no ability to pace themselves. It's funny, but then of course they're in pain. And then, of course, they don't associate exercise as being an enjoyable thing. Now, I think the good kids, they find that's quite enjoyable. And then they score a goal and they're like, that was good. You know, and you get that. But you can leave them over there because you ultimately, you know, I saw some study that women's sport especially is worse. Like 80% of girls stop doing sport at like 16 years old when they become to A-levels and elite. You know, it's like huge numbers. You know, well, I hope they've learned to enjoy exercise. You know, say when I speak to rowers, the amount of rowers who did like rowing at university where they absolutely like just blitz them. And they say, why do you go to a rowing club? And like this look of fear on their face, you know, and like, and you can go back to a rowing club and not have to kill yourself. And this is what, so you spend so much time now trying to tell people they don't need to like really hurt, because that's what puts you off exercise. And as you say, if you haven't got that association, why would you ever go back to do it? And then of course now with less sport in school, people have got like no association to sports at all. So they're having to learn for the first time. And I'm seeing people, you know, when they're 40, 50 who haven't exercised since they were 16 years old, and they think they would hate it, and then, oh, I've got to do it again. And you're like,
yeah, let's get into that, because that's very interesting. If you're 30 and you haven't done any kind of exercise for the past 10 years, how do you fall in love with sport?
I think the first thing is just to start moving at a very, very low level. I think most of the programs are just too much for most people, you know, so that like, realistically, if you're not doing any exercise, your fitness is whatever, 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10. That's not a judgment. It's just where you are. Most fitness classes are designed for you to be 5 or 6 out of 10. So if you go to that fitness class, you're probably going to think it's rubbish. And that's a real issue, you know? So like
struggle, not enjoy yourself, right?
So basically, if you can't say do a minute plank or a minute side plank, all yoga classes are going to feel hard because they're designed for you to be that fit. And of course, if you're super strong, you might find the average yoga class is too easy, you know? So the point is a lot of people aren't that fit enough. So it's really, just about starting very gradually and just doing something. So like my average client, they probably want to go take them for a jog, 60 seconds to 90 seconds. That's their first ever one. And most people would think, well, that's a failure. I got to do 20 minutes. And I'm like, no, 60 to 90 seconds. And you can get all of them up to like 5K. So they'll get injured fairly quickly. But they're not in pain when they're doing that run. Like, again, when you see people start running, they leg it. I'm like, where are you going? I'm like, slow down, because we're going to run probably at around walking pace or just above it. That is the first stage. And if you literally say, okay, let's see how far I can go. Oh, I got 60 seconds. You don't go, oh, what's wrong with me? That guy can run for 7 hours. You go, okay, wonder what happens next time. And literally next session, you'll run further. And you'll be like, oh, I run further. And that is the 1,000-mile steps starts with, what's the saying? 1,000-mile journey starts with one step.
With one step, right.
That's your one step, you know.
Enthusiast, something? Yeah.
Something like that, yes. And the point is, there's not one fit person who hasn't been training for years. I mean, like, no one. You know, you could say, oh, well, you just started this sport. And you're like, yeah, but what was you doing before that? Oh, another sport. You're like, okay, right. So, you know, and that is it. So people like say, and then also like looking at what's putting you off, you know? So like people join the gym. I'm like, but you don't need to join the gym. Do you like the gym? No, I love the gym, you know, but I know what I'm doing, confident in there. You know, I know people in there. How many people like the gym? Not many, you know? So the idea is, say you really wanted to learn the gym, then I would just say, go in. Obviously you don't use an instructor. Obviously you get an instructor that'll help, but just pick 3 bits of equipment and just use that for a month, because you're setting up the habit. You know, you talked before about atomic habits. The first rule of that is just getting the activity done, not what you do in the activity, you know? So the idea was, you know, it'd be better if you go to the gym every day for 6 minutes a day than to go once for 2 hours, because you've had to remember to go, stop your day to go in there. Well, that was a bit of an effort. Do one machine, leave. And the fact you've done, you know, probably not the greatest workout is irrelevant, because you've now got 6 repetitions of going to the gym, and that 20 to 70 thing, you're beginning to set that pattern. So,
and talking of atomic habits, I think you're starting to identify as someone who goes to the gym, as someone who does this on a like frequent basis. And that probably, going back to our earlier conversation, maybe in that you won't stop at a certain point when the environment changes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And because, so when you become that, it just becomes automated, you know, so that you don't even, as you say, don't need to think. The point being that's the early stages. So you're talking about the people who are listening here who don't really do exercise.
Yeah.
That's the stage you're at. And like, I just don't try and copy my program, somebody's program, the muscly guy on the internet who says, do this, you know, I got to do my 3-day split, 45 minutes. Like, it's not the way to work. You know, the way I like to start with people is to zoom right out and say, literally, let's go back the last 12 months. Tell me how many exercise sessions you've done. They're like, oh, I've done 8 runs. I'm like, that's 1 every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So then you say, okay, well, my goal is not now to do a 4 times a week run program, which sounds great, but it's so, you know, the transition from every 6 weeks to that. You're like, let me just learn to enjoy running. Let me stick it to 6 to 10 minutes, because what we're trying to build first of exercise is not exercise, not fitness. It's the habitual thing, so that you're beginning to work out what's going on. And if you are going to the gym and you have to go to the gym, then there's a process in that. Again, most people who go to the gym didn't just go in and go, oh, I can do Olympic lifts. This is great. It's like, no, I had a trainer for 6 months. He said, I'll train this. I first of all just did this 2 bits of equipment. Like, you know, it's becoming a learning environment there. Or the limit might be that you've got you're doing an hour session and you feel in your head, well, I've got to do an hour, otherwise it's pointless. And you're like, no, you can go in for 15 minutes.
Yeah, I changed my workouts specifically for this reason. I thought that 1 hour sessions were too long for me. Instead, I'm doing 25-minute sessions, but I'm doing them about 5 times a week, 4 or 5 times a week. And I feel much better than doing it 3 times for an hour.
Yeah, and then sort of the research is sort of going that way too, that it's an intensity of effort that creates like the muscle building thing, you know? So it'd be better, say you can do an hour session, like you're probably wasting half of that, you know, like you're taking a long rest, then you know, think I'm doing 4 sets here, I'll just save the first 2, you know? But if you went in and just like, you're pumped up and you destroy yourself on that first set, it's good evidence that you're going to get better results than the person who's just chilling out for 4, you know? And then obviously it's one of the problems with the internet is there's a lot of top-down advice from the pros, and it matters for the pros, but it doesn't matter for us normal people. And the problem we get is normal people don't want to hear this, because they want to, no, I want to be like him. You're like, yeah, but him's been, you know, 6 times a week in the gym for 8 years. You've, you know, been on and off for 4 months. So it's like, so the point being, for normal level, it's so easy. And this is, you know, back to that, my 30-year-old's not exercised before. I'm sorry, but the level you need to do is like ridiculously low. You can do 10-minute running a week. Over 12 weeks, you'll get a massive gain. You could literally do a 15-minute haphazard weight session, push-ups here at home, and it accumulates over the time. You know, you don't need to go, oh, well, you know, the pro bodybuilders are doing 6 times a week, 2 sessions a day sometimes. It's like, yeah, but they're huge, you know.
So if you haven't trained a long time, you want to get into some kind of sports, find a sport you like and start extra slow, just not to lose, like not to associate pain and struggle with it, but to start building to enjoy it. Is that the idea?
Pretty much. Well, again, it's different sort of levels of like who you are. I just ask myself who you are. If you are quite an active person, it's very different if you are literally done no exercise ever.
Yeah.
If you've literally done no exercise ever, because the stats on like health and, going on that side of things, like if you just do something, you get an absolute massive improvement in health, so that includes like walking. If you walk 10,000 steps a day, like the mortality rate drop is humongous, and then it's sort of like a J curve of fitness mortality is. So if you do a little bit, massive improvement, quite a lot, massive improvement. When you're doing, piles and piles of it, actually probably not so good for you because you're doing too much. So for the person, I say where you are. So if you're literally sedentary and you've never done nothing, then I'd be starting off the simplest thing that you're prepared to do, And if that means you won't, I don't want to leave the house, then we could just do a HIIT workout in the house, 5 minutes getting out of breath. Then you can do a little bit of strength training, 10 minutes a week, twice a week. You're going to make some nice sort of things. Now you might say, no, I'm really pumped up. I want to form the habit. I'll do 10 minutes a day. I'm like, okay, but you need to have in your head that I just need to tick over, it's not so much what you do when you're feeling good, it's what you do when you're feeling bad. It's not really plan A, it's plan B, So I get a lot of clients who are not so much that I've never done nothing, but they're either all in or all out, and I'm like, not interested in the all in. And the idea is I need the all in person when they come to see me to learn the all out, what is the moderate version of that. And this is where the importance of not having too many rules is, so because, if you think about doing an hour a week and then the all out is, forget it, I'll be back in 3 weeks. It's pointless,
What do you think of this? It's very relevant to the all in and all out thing that you said. I really like to set goals in different ways, depending on whether they're long-term goals or short-term goals.
Yeah.
If they're short-term goals, great. It's going to be like one of those basic SMART goals, time-specific, and so on and so on. But for long-term goals, I actually prefer to go more in the direction of themes rather than goals. The key difference is over a long period of time, your motivation will eventually start to drop. But you probably with everybody, whatever they thought was really important 6 months, 12 months, 24 months ago, doesn't feel as important right now. So to sustain something to the same level than when you planned it, you either need to be very good at planning and to be very realistic about how much you're going to care about it X amount of time from now on. Or the other approach is to be a little bit more relaxed in the parameters so that when you inevitably aren't able to match that high expectation that you had from yourself from a while ago, you can adjust it. For example, instead of going and saying that I want to go to the gym 4 times a week, you make it that this is the year of fitness. And you have a rough idea that it's going to the gym and 4 times a week is what right now works best. But if 6 months from now you picked up an injury and you can't go to work out the same way that you used to, you don't go, like you said, from going 4 times to the gym to 0, because if you can't do 4, that's it. You failed. There's no point continuing. Or if you get invited to a Pilates class or a football game, you allow yourself to skip the gym session and replace it with some other sport. Or if you go on holiday and you don't do any sports, well, then you admit that, but you say, this year is themed as a fitness year. I'll try to eat healthy and take the stairs instead of the elevator. So adjusting the environment to the situation rather than sticking to a program, which somebody who's like a professional athlete would. What do you think of that as a difference?
Yeah, well, I think definitely in that case, the more rules you have, the more likely you can get put off, which I think. But I think it comes back to for most people, health and fitness is not their main goal. And I think it's important to recognize that. Now, the question then is, what is your main goal? Now, if it's your business, then that's fine. If it's your family, being a mother, being a father, then that's fine. It's like, whatever your main goal is, the fitness goal needs to be complementary to that, because a lot of people I'm working with, they don't even think about their goal. And this is the thing, like you talk about a long-term goal. You need some sort of feeling, some sort of vision, some sort of thing that sort of drives you on. Now, the problem is your fitness one probably doesn't have it, so like if you got a business thing, there'll be a business thing. It could be wanting to beat that rival. It could be the day you sell the business. It could be just the feeling you get every time you think about this problem, and it's sort of driving you. And then like, where's fitness in this? You're like, oh, I haven't got one. And you don't need an equivalent fitness, because fitness doesn't need to be number one. But I think what people are missing, a lot of people, they're watching this home, you don't have something that really motivates you, because people who do motivate, or a motivating area have this sort of, it could be like a 4-second image. You know, my bodybuilding one was just me being on stage. It was a bit of fear of being judged and a bit of me winning a trophy, you know, and, you know, I may not won a trophy or whatever, but the point was that what got me to do the things I got to do. Right. And sometimes I had it before when I was doing athletics and 400 meters, it was the annoyance of losing to a guy, and that fueled me for a winter. So there's like this little emotional thing. Now, most people who struggle in fitness, health, they don't have it, you know. Right. Now, you can't just create it. I can't just say, think of this, but you can begin to think, what am I trying to get? And you actually have to think. It's not as easy as people would like to think, oh, I'll just think about putting in my jeans. And then you're like, yeah, but did it actually produce any emotion for you? Right. You need to make it like quite rich, the thought. Okay, where are you wearing those jeans? Who are around those jeans? And it's trying to get that sort of feeling. Because if fitness is like number 50 on your list, what you're probably going to have to do is get fitness somehow in your main vision.
It's like almost removing it to be as a chore that I need to find a way to fit into the jeans, to something that excites you. I want to wear this size dress for my friend's wedding.
Exactly. Cool. And then think about though, if you don't really care about it, if your main goal was business, you need to get a vision where health and fitness is somehow in that, you know, saying, so, I'm going to sell my business, I'm going to be this weight or whatever. Then you need to work in, you've got to really understand the sacrifice you make for fitness, how they're helping your main goal, because you're not going to do it otherwise. So if you know you make more money if you went to the gym every day and you cared about the money mostly, you'll probably find, no, I got to do the gym. Makes me better at work. Do you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
And again, a lot of this is labeling in your head because it's not true, you know, because you can make an argument, my main goal is being a parent. Well, I need to be there for my son. I need to be there for my son. You could say, well, actually, what if you being in the best shape, not being there for half an hour, is actually you being better for your son? You know, it's how you label that.
Better role model.
Exactly.
Can protect them better or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be true, but it has to be true to you, you know? And this is what I think this is like the initial bit of motivation.
Cool.
And I'll ask clients for their goal and like, I'm bored listening to it sometimes. And I'm bored by it. There's no emotion there. You know what I mean? And it's like, but when they've got it, and like I say, it's not so easy to get. Like that can just be it. That's it. I've got one vision. Okay, it's me on holiday in Egypt, looking at that could be it. Or it's me. Obviously, like, you see this a lot with weddings. You know, I don't like training wedding people because people will do unsustainable things in the name of the wedding. You know, and that's good in one sense because. But the point is, they're going to make it's literally like a bodybuilding thing. You know, who stands on stage and gets judged being roughly naked? Not many, but a wedding's a bit like that. You're in a dress being not judged, but people are looking at you. So you see people making sacrifices they would never do, which is great for the results, but then they can't. But now if you can get them during that time, what I said earlier on, to actually do some of the different experiments. So like exercise 6 a.m, 6 at night, lunchtime, you know, try this food, learn to do a fast here. Then actually during that overly motivated period, they've actually learned some skills.
And some of that will stick for later on.
It'll stick, exactly.
Oh, cool.
So, you know, it's the same thing like, you know, dry January, people don't drink during January, or sober October. I'm like, okay, right, you're going to go out Saturday? Like, no, I'm staying in, it's dry January. Like, no, you're missing the point. Like, you haven't got connections to socializing without alcohol, you know? And I haven't drunk since 2008.
Wow, that's amazing.
But the first time I started, it was 2004, and I was in a New Year's Eve, and I was drinking. I said, I'm going to go chat up that girl after a few more drinks. And I thought, I don't need to be drunk to chat up a girl. So I made a bet with the guy I was with. I was going to give up drinking until I could chat up women sober. Now, it took a few months, but the women chatting bit was actually easy because I like chatting.
I was going to say, you're still not drinking.
So exactly. The hardest bit, though, was dancing sober. And I was there going, and it felt like just kill me. And it took me like 4 months before I could sort of dance sober without feeling awkward. I could chat to people. But after that had changed me, because that was 80% of the reasons I drunk was to not feel awkward dancing or to chat people up. So
alcohol is a social lubricant, right? It's that's the main reason I think people like it. It's easier to break ice and skip the small talk and get deeper, I guess.
So then what I learned from that was because my connections had been changed. So I'd fundamentally been changed by that motivated period, you know? Yeah. I went back to drinking, but never. It was almost done. Then I was drinking like twice a year, and then I just thought, okay, I'm going. Now I don't like the taste of alcohol, so I never have one glass of wine. But the point was the connections have been rewired. Yeah. I was a different person afterwards. It stuck thereafter, and then now, you know, I know I've done everything. I've been, you know, best man, stag do's, Brazil carnival, all sober. So there's no connection. But then I go to events now. People meet me for the first time. They go, "Oh my God, you got such great willpower," and I'm like, I don't have one desire to drink. There is no willpower being used. It's a bit like if you've never smoked. How much willpower does it take not to smoke around others? None. I don't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? So what happens? You get to the stage where people think you're like, and this is where a lot of people think willpower is so necessary. You're like, no, but they enjoy exercising. So why do they need willpower? Do you know what I'm saying? If you enjoy playing paddle, I don't have to convince you to go and play paddle. do you know what I'm saying? But like, again, if I don't enjoy exercise, you need willpower now to sort of train yourself, which comes back to that pattern earlier on. When I have willpower, when I'm motivated in January, am I training myself to be more skillful around exercise, food, so that it lasts once the willpower goes? And then
because willpower is the same as motivation. You have it right now, and in a little bit of time, you probably won't. So I like this approach where not using time when you're motivated just to get gains, but to actually try out different techniques and, like you said, fasts and different exercising different time of the day, so that it's easier when you're not so motivated.
And it's not like these aren't mystery, some of these things too. Basically, like, my medical studies are on 5 years. So if I said, I've got cancer today, they do treatment, then they look 5 years later, he's still alive, hasn't got cancer, he's a success. Yeah. Weight loss studies are the same. 5 years later, what weight were you compared to the start? So then if we were going to be betting today now to say, well, what shape is this person going to be in 5 years? The question would be, what are you going to bet on? And you're going to look at like their behaviors and skills. So I'd say, well, person A likes exercise, person B doesn't like exercise. Who are you betting on? I'll be like, well, the exerciser. But then if you said person B is like, no, they're vegan, they're good with their food, and this person goes out drinking, and I'm like, probably going to go with the vegan, because this person hasn't controlled their food. They got exercise, yes. Now, of course, it could go the other way, that they learn exercise, but you're just going on behavior. So for me, with my people, I'm thinking, can they exercise early in the morning? Can they exercise in the evening? Well, if they can, that's giving me more confidence. Can they exercise on their own, in a group, at home, outside? Like, the more environments, the better.
Interesting.
Do you see what I mean? Because then I'm thinking, this person's going to exercise forever, because it doesn't. Obviously, in lockdown, we saw this a lot, didn't it? Gyms were closed. So people who like gyms found a way. Obviously, everyone started running the first 3 weeks, and then they sort of gave up, or whatever. Yes. So we're trying to get you skilled around exercise, but the same with food. Can I miss a meal? Can I miss breakfast? Now, a lot of people do intermittent fasting. A lot of people have never, though, missed dinner. And you're like, well, hold up, because if you're going to overeat, and we're all going to overeat, because I'm going to go to the pub on Saturday afternoon, watch the sport, have a dinner, I'm going to go whatever. The simplest thing is to yin to yang. I'm going to eat too much tonight, we'll eat less during the day. But if you've been eating every 3 hours for the last 8 years, which most people have, you've not learned the skills to miss and yin and yang easily, because I want you to be able to do it easily. So people, yes, love intermittent fasting, but so many people have not eaten in the evening. And I really learned this a lot. I had a client who was doing Ramadan. I was like, well, what are the rules of Ramadan? I said, all right, I'll join you for the first week. And this was back in 2014, 15, when it was over the summer solstice. So basically you had to eat at like 5 a.m. and nothing until 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. It was a long day, like 18 hours. And I remember it's like, I was still working and still running around, and it was like 11 a.m. and I thought, well, I'm hungry and I'm thirsty. And how long have I got? I'm like, 10 hours. Oh no, I'm going to die. And then 10 minutes later, the hunger had gone, the thirst had gone. And I was like, oh, this is a bit fake. It can't be real. It must be because it's disappeared. And I wasn't hungry or thirsty for like 3 more hours afterwards. And then you're beginning to think, so that's the first time I'd really not eaten during the day. And then again, after that, the more you can disconnect, the better, because, we eat for different reasons. A lot of the reasons you eat is because it's the time of the day. 6 o'clock, it's time to eat. Or I finish the day. It's a symbolic thing. It's the end of the day. I finish it. Or I need energy for exercise. So there's all sorts of reasons we're eating. And the more we can disconnect those reasons, the easier it is. So if you're just left with natural hunger, that'd be great. Because, if I see somebody eating some nice food, I'm like, I wouldn't mind that too, actually.
I want some food as well, yeah.
What do you think TV adverts are about? Saying I'm so full. Why do they put people at the restaurants by the window when you first get to there? And, it's all, of course, very clever stuff in that sense. But the point being is, if we're betting on that person 5 years down the line, I want them to be able to exercise all times a day, miss a meal easily, leave food on a plate. This is what people miss. Like, we've so been trained, a lot of us, to finish the plate, especially, my generation, they always like starving kids in Africa. You got to finish the plate. But of course, now there's too much food given to us. So if your body gets full and you've got your brain saying, oh, I better finish that, you're not going to be able to naturally self-select the portions and so forth. So there's lots of skills you can get somebody well motivated to do. And the way I was learning skills is you just have to do 2 or 3 or 4 times. Literally, that is it. No contract for life. Got to never eat breakfast again. You got to be an intermittent faster, join the group. No, just do it once. Can you do it? Oh, I failed the first time. No worries. Do it again.
Try again.
I got a bit better. 3rd time, you got it, because I remember years ago, I used to eat 8 times a day. Literally, I'd eat at 5 a.m., 2 hours. I'd be throwing a sandwich in before clients. And then I remember trying to do a fast, and I think I was like a 2-day, it was like a vegetable juice, detox thing.
Yep.
I think I lasted about 6 hours on the first. The second time I got to Saturday night, about 10 hours. The third time I got to Sunday morning. It took me 5 goes till I did the 2 days. And then now, because I've discounted with hunger, my body's adapted to hunger more. I've done a 5-day fast twice. So it shows where you can go from like having to eat all the time to not having to eat. It's like a trainable skill.
Have you heard of the M&M's study they've done maybe 3 or 4 years ago?
Okay, no, refresh me on it. I don't know.
Yeah,
may have not
so
by that name. Yeah.
It's relevant to what you said about not finishing food on the plate.
Okay, yeah.
So they basically took, I don't know, some groups. There were maybe like 6 or 7 groups. And the first one, because M&M's, they're all the same color.
Okay, right.
Sorry, they're all different colors, but
Right,
they all
got you.
taste the same.
Okay, right. Okay, yeah.
That's kind of the idea behind it. And the first group had a bowl of only red M&Ms, and they looked and counted how many people ate on average.
Yeah.
The second group had 2 colors, and what they found is that the group with 2 colored M&Ms,
Right.
even though the taste is exactly the same, ate significantly more, about 30% more.
Okay, right.
And when you add a third color, it goes another 20% more. And when you add a fourth color, it goes another 15% more.
Oh, that's clever, yeah.
And the more colors you added, I think up until like 8 colors, people ate more and more M&Ms, and they justified it from a point of like evolutionary psychology, where the more variety and the more colors there is in food, the more your brain thinks it's important to eat it. And then other psychologists says, well, it's just stimulating and more fun to eat different things. But the conclusion and like the kind of finding of the study is about those, I think they're called clean diets. Maybe you'll correct me on this, is when you have few ingredients on your plate.
Yeah.
And the example is if you have a steak in front of you and you eat a 250 gram steak, you probably won't be hungry. That will probably be enough. If they offer you another 250 gram steak, and would you say, well, would you like to eat the second one? You'll say no.
Yeah.
But if you have a steak in front of you and you had some fries, and then you add some gravy and some fun sides and a starter and some sweet dessert, you're going to have no problem eating that, even though it is 3 times the calories of that one steak. And that's kind of shows that the more variety you have, the more stimulating and exciting it is for you to eat all this food. So a potential way to reduce all those calories is by having fewer choices. What do you think of that?
Oh, I could definitely agree. I remember arguing that with my mum when I was a kid. I wanted trifle. She's like, well, you're full. You can finish, the vegetables. I'm like, no, I've got plenty of room for trifle at the end. Don't worry about that. No, but I think what it really brings up is that there's this traditional view of hunger, and it's just wrong. The traditional view of hunger is, I'm hungry 4 out of 10 at 10 a.m. Then I get a bit hunger, and it's not how it works. It comes in a wave, it disappears. It's got nothing to do with hunger, as you just shown with that experiment where you can eat 3 times as much. And because of that, people don't react in the appropriate way. Like you can't respond to the first stimulus. A lot of people respond, especially now, like people are obsessed with, they're almost fearful of not eating. I feel a bit hungry, better have this. But it's like, you can't give in this way. In the olden days, I don't think these things mattered because there just wasn't that much food around. Coming back from school, I used to be starving hungry. I don't see that with kids now. If somebody's hungry or mum's got
easy access,
got a thing, here's a thing, food there, you don't just tell people just, stop eating, it's not. So yeah. And as you say, the foods are much more tasty now, and they know, food is a science, get you to eat more and stuff like that. And as you say, if there's more different things, it goes, but it just shows. And there are lots of other studies with like packets versus not. We've seen those studies where they basically put people, as the BBC showed, recreated the study. They're in a bowling alley. They had unlimited crisps in a packet, or they just had an unlimited grab of thing. And of course they were measuring it. And the people who were just grabbing it ate like 3 times as much as the people who had to open the packet. Because your brain goes, oh, you had 3 packets, you probably had enough. Well, this one's like, ooh, let's see if I can get to the bottom.
Less barrier to entry. It's amazing. In business, it even works. If you have, not so related, but it just comes to mind because it's so close. If you have a shop, an outlet, and the door is open, to it, more people will enter from the outside than if the door is closed. But if you have a little step, then the hierarchy goes, most people will come on with the open door on the ground floor, less people will come on if the door is closed, and significantly less people will come on if you just have a 30-minute step before entering.
Even a tiny step.
Even a tiny step. Just throws people off that little barrier to entry. Same thing as opening a pack of chips. That extra little move
just
Gets
shows
more
how
like
the
this.
subconscious is like
Yeah.
driving a lot of our actions. And obviously one of the issues like with health and fitness is it's a 24/7 sort of event. You know, you can have a
Yeah.
brilliant day, you got your steps, you got your movement, you're trying to lose body fat, and then literally you make a 500 calorie mistake at 8 p.m. and that's, you haven't gained weight, but you've lost your losses.
Yeah.
And then after 4 days of that, you don't see any changes. So then you don't get the motivation back. And all of a sudden you just feel a bit demoralized. And it's all, they say it's not real. It's not hunger. It's just like stimulants, you know what I'm saying? And the problem is this, you know, there's things that stimulate you can be the emotions inside, a bit bored, wanting to relax, wanting to switch off, you know, happy. You know, I'm always saying that's the worst one to have is eating when you're happy, because I'm like, when you're down, and it's not criticism to eat when you're down, but it's like the natural, it's the most, you know, when we're down, we want to do something, some comfort, or you sort of rely on addictive type behaviors. And the most common one is, acceptably one is, just to have some food. And it's always going to be a little bit of a battle. And the idea is not to make it that you never do it, but if I can make it 1 in 3, so every time I feel down, it's 1 in 3 times I eat food, that's probably enough to get results, you know. But if you also eat when you're happy, then we're in trouble now, because we're only going to get results when life's all right, man. So, and that's quite simulated, you know, the people aren't used to just sitting with like a normal feeling good thing. So again, the point is, it links to what you're saying, is that the more things we can disconnect from, you know, so in the M&M example, you know, can I eat the same amount with 5 colors of M&Ms as 1? You know, you could probably train yourself to do that, you know, and if you could do that, then that's going to make life a lot easier in that sense. You know, other stuff with like soup bowls, when they don't know what contraption they use, but it never goes down. So one soup bowl, it never goes down. So how much you do it, put it in, and then people eat 3 times as much.
Oh, what?
Again,
Really?
You know, yeah, it's quite clever. So they've done lots of studies on like, again, it shows that it's not related to what they feel. There's a very good one that came up on my website. I can't remember how it worked, but what they believed was in the protein shake had a huge effect on how hungry they felt afterwards. But it wasn't even how much they felt. It was actually blood sugar response to the thing. So I'm butchering it a little bit, but I can send you the link. So the idea was, they say, one person says there's 400 calories, full of carbs, healthy for you. The other one says it's a low carb, low calorie one. And those people, the blood sugar, they got hungrier quicker, and the blood sugar didn't react the same as the other one. So,
but were they the same drinks?
Same drinks, exactly. So the point was the preconception belief affected how the body actually reacted to it. And there's lots of sort of stuff like this. It was a study to do with psychology and the response, but a physical response in the body. Because I still feel like the biggest thing that people don't talk about much is the placebo effect. Like it's like magic, and people we talk about it, we know what it is, but we don't really realize that if I say, this can make you feel better, you feel better. And you know, I'm like, even like Darren Brown did that one when he was faith, you know, Darren Brown, the magician, and he was faith healing, and he said, look, it's all lies. I know nothing about faith. I'm just going to make it up. And he made it up, and people still like got improvements. And you're like, they knew he was lying. He knew he was lying. And it still was. So it just shows like the power of this brain. And this is why I lean on, like, you know, getting into results changing. Like, it's a psychological issue, and people are so underselling themselves of what they can do and what they can achieve, you know. And I think because we never talk about how people can actually change, that you think, oh, I've tried everything. You're like, you've probably just tried the same thing, and you've probably tried nothing about trying to actually change. But we're sort of like, people they're just so underselling themselves of what they can achieve. It's, you know, sad really, you know what I'm saying? But that's modern nature, and that's what I'm there trying to help people, to give them.
What are the most fun projects that you're working on, that you like working on? Because you've been on TV and you've helped people on TV series, and you come on podcasts and news, and you've got your private clients, and you do things in different countries. What is the most rewarding thing that you like to work on?
I'm still literally that one-on-one, I see it like a chess match. It's like me versus you, and your demotivated side is on your team, and I'm butchering that, but we're both trying to get you to change, and you've got a demotivated side that doesn't want to get there. So I'm still pretty obsessed with trying to unlock this sort of formula, and the best ones are those changes where people don't believe they can get there. It's not always the biggest change. You know, people always think, what's your best story from this big? It's not always that. It's always about long-term maintenance. That's all. If people don't maintain it, then that's not success to me. You know, it's not great. Okay, you look good for 6 months, but you went back. I'm like, no, we missed something. You know what I mean? Like, should we have learned some stress technique? And obviously you can't, you know, control people, but like, and that's why I say, when, you know, people finishing working with me, I'm like, these are the things. If your life situation changes, you've got to reset it up. You know, if you get married, you've got to reset up food, you know what I'm saying? So for me, it's still that. It still motivates me, is how do we really put this to like practical applications in the real world, you know? And it's amazing how it's funny, people like have read my books and know who I am when they work with me. It feels almost fake because they're like really pre-prepared, ready. But like a lot of people just stick in. A guy who lives in Hill do, and then and you see how little people put in. And my goal still is, how do we get change where people aren't participating? I know it sounds a bit weird, but like the self-help industry is, I've paid £3,000. Let's go to see Tony Robbins. Well, you're very pre-motivated. What if you've paid 50 quid and you sort of care a little bit, and the good thing about health and fitness is, you're not trying to solve their life. You're basically just trying to, insert something and it will greatly improve their life. If you're like other things, trying to build a business, that's a bit more dramatic. For health and fitness, it's not so. So I think you can do it in a way that you don't have to like sign up to a Tony Robbins seminar and jump up and down. It's like, well, there's different ways I can do this. And that's what I'm still sort of trying to get that passion in that sort of sense to work it, and then once we get there, then I would like to expand it out in programs. How could you get to more people then? But I still haven't quite mastered the one-on-one when people are not interested. That's the key. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think people realize how demotivated people often are.
Yeah, I think it's hard to do anything when you're not interested. I think that just every cell of your body doesn't work the same way if you're not enjoying what you're doing, and you see it everywhere. People that go to work, like to their office, and they don't like their work, don't work as well as people that love what they do in work. And I'm sure the same thing is for sports, and I'm sure the same thing is for kids at school and their favorite subjects. So I think it's like a universal thing, right?
Yeah, and I think that's, but so much of that is just labels that you're giving it, and it's not. I think a lot of stuff isn't true. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can, I quite like, when I'm used to competing in bodybuilding, I love the feeling of going to bed hungry, because I would like, I'm going to wake up leaner. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, I'm leaner. Like, most people don't like that sort of feeling, so it's a label that you put on it, and that's the same thing. Like, people like that feeling when they're stiff after a game of sport. It's a label. If some random just kicked me in the knee, I probably wouldn't be happy about that the next day. But if I got kicked scoring a try in rugby or a goal, it's like,
it's so worth it.
It's that meaning you're sort of putting on it, so it's about trying to reset some of those sort of things. But like I say, getting in shape it's a very hard one, because it's so 24/7 and it's so integrated to different areas, because if I'm just building a business, you can still drink lots every night. Okay, it may affect you, but a lot of people have built businesses drinking lots every night. You can be out of shape, you can do all sorts of things, but health and fitness is 24/7. It's everywhere you go, it's who you socialize with, it's how you spend your time, it's how you handle stress. It's whether do you even like doing any of the health and fitness behaviors, saying, do you want to change? There was some study that showed that people had the same lunch for like 80% or 50% had the same lunch for 15 years or something. Like, wow. They have a ham sandwich every lunch and they keep doing it. Maybe it's different here in London, but I also think London's a bit of a bubble that people don't pick up on. Like, the average person, obviously I'm from Wrexham, so I go and watch Wrexham Football Club, in the news and all that these days. When I see people from North Wales, I'm just like, oh my Lord, this is how like normal people in Britain, because in Wales, you can drive everywhere. You drive you can't walk to the next town. It's, 6 kilometers away, 10 kilometers away. So people do, hardly any exercise. And I see, this is like normal people. I live here in Battersea, which has got the best runners in the country. Like the park run Battersea is crazy. Like 180, 200 people go under 20 minutes every week. There's nowhere that matches that. And then, but that's fake. That's like a bubble. I used to live in Sydney. People were in shape there. I used to live in Brazil. People were in great shape there. But I was living on the beach in like these micro culture type things. The average person go 3 miles inland. They don't do that. And the same thing. The average person probably lives in Sunderland or stay in Birmingham. They're just at a much lower level than what we sort of see here in London, again, with the healthiness of the banks and that sort of attitude, you know what I mean? So it's not, so London's much healthier than the rest of the country, but people don't see that,
Before we started recording, you sent me an email with some topics that we can talk about. And there you said that people focus on wrong things and plans over executions. So I assume you meant that they plan over executing.
Exactly.
What is that like?
Well, people always want to know the plan, don't they? Give me a plan. Let me follow this plan. And it's like, the plan's just an element. Then the question is, how do I interpret that to how I'm actually going to put it out in the real world? And you touched on it earlier on. The more rules you have, the more likely you're just going to quit. Well, we can't have what we talked before, all or nothing, because the nothing is just the end of the problem, because I say, if you view everything on an annual basis, how many exercises I've done across a year, what I'm saying, how much I lose across the year, then you're beginning to see there's months and months where you're rubbish, and the question for me is not what do you do in January, near your birthday, before your holiday. It's like, what about the other things? Because actually, if we sorted that out, we'd probably solve the problem. You know,
So are you saying that it's good to measure things on an annual basis or not good?
It's good to give us a realistic picture of what the heck's going on, because if you are, I had this one lady come to me, she said, Ben, I just can't lose weight. And I went, oh, well, let's just draw out your history, you know. And she'd lost 100 kilograms over the last 10 years, but she would gain 17, lose 17, gain 12. And I'm like, you've got no problem losing weight. You've lost literally 100 kilograms. You've just put them all straight back on. Do you know what I'm saying? And she was like 115 kilos. So then she would then lose some weight, and then she would then get stuck, because she's like, well, I'm stuck at 100. I'm like, doesn't bother, because I just knew that graph that I'm thinking she's now just stuck, plateaued, doesn't bother me. And then she went down, you know what I'm saying? So it was like, we weren't trying to make her, I wasn't trying to make her fat loss phases harder, because they were already very successful. I was trying to teach her that when she came off them, we're just going to break even. You know what I'm saying? So I'd actually trying to, normally with people who are motivated, I'm often trying to pull them back. You say when you train athletes, when you train an athlete, you should be pulling them back because they're trying too hard. You know, that normal personal training clients are not so motivated. But if you've got an athlete and you're not holding them back, then that's not normal. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, you want to train twice a day? I'll train 3 times. And you're like, no, you know. So in that sort of scenario, so then she got stuck at 95. She got stuck at 95, 83, 76. In the end, she lost like 53 kilos.
Beautiful.
Do you know what I'm saying? So like, but that took, 2.5 years. The point was, she would always be moaning that she was stuck. And I'm like, no, to me, that doesn't bother me. So the point being the plan, because most people think, I want to lose 30 kilos. I'm going to do it in 30 weeks. Let's go. And I'm like, that's sort of ignoring what the body is going to do. And when it comes back to the execution is, you're getting feedback from your body, you're getting feedback from your emotions, and you want to use them rather than sticking to the plan. So the plan might be, okay, eat this, and then you're like, I'm bored. That's something you should then react with. And what you don't do is go, no, I'm going to push through it. Come on, new year, push through it, push. Because then after 4 weeks of fighting the boredom, you're gone. And what are you doing? You're eating the pizza. I'll forget that. I'm such a failure, though. I'll just eat more pizza. I'll come back, but,
especially if you're coping with like negativity by eating more. Right?
Yeah, well, especially in those sort of cycles. But of course, you've just been ignoring a cycle for like the last 4 weeks. It's been saying I'm bored. So what you would say is the plan says this, I'm bored. I need to change. I need to listen to that emotion and change it. And then that's what about execution. So it's like, then you'd say, okay, it doesn't mean you can go eat a huge pizza because that's sort of ruined the plan. But you'd be surprised how many little like changes keeps you in the game. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not that you want to quit the thing. It's that you just want to have one meal out here, or you just want to like change the food. It's like really subtle things can change stuff in that sense. So a lot of the plans that, like, I always call it ugly dieting when I was like, my bodybuilding shows, like you want to quit, and then you maybe eat a chocolate bar, and then you're like, but you don't quit, and you still lost body fat that day for the show. It counts. Yes, you've failed the plan. Oh, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Same thing if you're exercising and, say you do 50 runs next year, 1 run a week. Nobody cares if run 16 was rubbish. 122, you only did 10 minutes. Like, you did 1 run a week. Like you've done you know what I'm saying? So people get stuck to the plan, and this is why they get them off trainers. And then they're too scared to listen to themselves over the plan when your emotions are telling you what to do. You know what I'm saying? So you're saying, I want to change, or I don't want to do, I hate that exercise. I'll just drop it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're not at that. And of course, that's why I say you've got to separate different people. Because if you are at that top level, a super good athlete, they don't really have that thought in their head. They go, that exercise doesn't work for me. Can we do something else? Do you know what I mean? Rather than pushing through and then saying, I'm quitting. And this is where the problem is earlier on. Top-down advice, everyone copies now the best person. So if I want to become running, I'm just going to follow, oh, look at that guy who runs 13 minutes, 55K. Right, I'm going to copy him. You're like, okay, but he's running 140 kilometers a week, and he's been doing it for 4 years. What are you running? Oh, I've got 10 kilometers last. And then if I say follow a normal person, people are like, no, I don't want to do that. And then who's the biggest guy? I'm going to follow the biggest guy. Then I'm going to follow, and it becomes, and it's not wrong. You want them to inspire you, but also then you still got to listen to what's coming back. People just won't listen to what they're getting back. And if they would listen to it, they would actually be much more
So if everyone's
successful.
Listening to like the best person, would you say that it's a good thing to try to like translate what they're doing to your level? Is it better to just follow them and somebody that is your level? Like what's a good approach here?
I think it's better. I think it's good to see what the top people can do, because then you're like, okay, wow, that's
just inspiring. It makes you want to do it.
But then sometimes it can be misleading, the inspiring things, because sometimes they sort of, see, it's a lot in bodybuilding where I wasn't very good at bodybuilding. I did 5 shows, got a trophy when I got to the over 40s, gave it up. But I was just, trying to lose body fat. And I'd say a lot of the stuff I do would be quite ugly. So I might eat a chocolate bar because didn't have enough willpower. But then I would just not eat more later, or I'd do more steps, or it was still within my calorie. It was ugly dieting. But then loads of people would then pretend they weren't doing that. Or like they would ignore the cheat day, like I would eat 2,000 calories a day, 25,000 steps a day, and I'd lose fat rapidly. But every Sunday I would eat all the food under the sun. And then the studies show that cheat days don't work for normal people, because bodybuilders are different, because you would do your cheat day and the next day you're desperate to eat, but you're so focused, you just ignore those things, but normal people don't do that. They end up eating badly. So cheat days don't really work. But the point being is that's where we're sort of at, is that people are copying the good people, but it's not going to apply to them in that sort of sense, So yeah, I've slightly lost my train of thought. What was I answering just then? To the,
So if you are that person that runs
that was it,
10 kilometers, and you're looking at David Goggins, who runs 140 kilometers every week, you're looking at him because he's inspiring, but you also want to translate what he's doing onto your level. What's a good approach here?
Well, I do like David. I love David Goggins' book. He's got this miraculous feats, but then all of them have been created because he's done something slightly stupid beforehand. So it's like he's gained 200 pounds and now he's got to lose it all in 12 weeks. Heroic. I think he lost 50 kilos before he went back into the Marines or whatever. But you're like, well, he was still 50 kilos overweight. And then he's like, I'm going to run 100 miles without doing any prep. No, so it's good to be inspired by the people who are at the top, but then it's also the good ones, though, normally are telling you not to be so mental like that, but it's just then trying to work out that is the right advice for you at your appropriate level, which links back to what I said. But I was going to say, a lot of people misremember that in body transformation. I think, fitness advice, I think it's a little bit obvious. If somebody's doing 140 a week, you're doing 10. Now, if you want to become that person, it's a journey to get there. But check how long it took them to get there. And David Goggins was in the army and was in the military. It took him years to get there. So you can get there. And I think it's important to remember you can get there. Like, there's nothing in fitness that's stopping you becoming super fit. It's the same with body transformation. You can achieve. The good thing about health and fitness is you can actually achieve it. And which is why I like the goal compared to say, if you want to become the CEO of your company, only one person can do it. If you want to get promotion at work, only one person can do it.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Health and fitness, we can all be in great shape. We can all, you can't all win the Olympics, but we can all be super fit.
We can all run a marathon or half a marathon. Yeah.
And that's why I like it, because it is literally open to everyone. And actually, the more people who do it would actually make it easier for the other people. A bit like I said, in Battersea, all the runners are there. Well, they're all raising this sort of area, in that sense.
But beautiful perspective. I really like it.
But I definitely see in body transformation slightly different, because people, I was with a client that I met an old client in the outdoor gym, and I'm like, oh, he's lost 10 kilos with me. Like, oh, how do you do? Literally, I just ate like nothing for 2 months. And I was like, hold up, you had a burger every Saturday night. You got drunk at least once. Like, why? And people were like mistell this. They almost like fabled. And you see this a lot with like bodybuilding coaches. They want you to eat low carb. And you're like, what if I feel better having higher carbs? And you're like, oh, well, and then so they sort of have this way they preach, but I've seen lots of them not stick to it, or they're telling you what they stick to it. And then it's amazing. Like, people come to me and they think, oh, you must just eat clean every day. You must be hungry. I'm like, no, not really at all. Like, what are you on about? It's like, that's what, but then a lot of people want to give that sort of persona that it's all discipline. It's like, it's about just getting the job done. If you move a lot naturally, you can eat a lot more food than you think. It doesn't all have to be clean. And most people are not arguing they're arguing over little minor sort of things. So they're arguing about whether I can never have a pizza. You're like, you can have it once a week. Oh, well, it's easy. Or whatever that sort of moderation sort of thing is. So, answer your question, people ever be inspired by the people, and I'd copy it to a sensible degree. But if you're going to listen to the emotions, when I said all about execution, your emotion's going to tell you something. So say you say, right, Goggins runs 140 this week, I'm going to run 70. Well, after 30, my knee hurts, my ankle hurts, I'm knackered. You should then just have no ego and say, well, I've done 30 kilograms in a week. I'd never done that before. Well done. And take 7 weeks to get up. I think
gradually build to it.
We're too much on this thing. And that really comes into like weight loss. Generally, when I see like people who need to lose, quite a nice amount of weight, I don't see many people go more than 20 or 30 kilos a year. So
that sounds like a lot.
It's a lot, but what I'm going to bring it back to is I'll have people like in January, or when they start with me, they've lost 3 kilos in 2 weeks. And they're like, I don't think I'm losing anything. And I'm like, hold up here. 3 kilos in 2 weeks.
That's fast. That's really good.
And I'm like, you're at 75 kilos a year pace. And then people are like, okay, that's quite quick.
Yeah.
So I like to, if you multiply to a year, you get quite a good picture, because people never think it's quick enough, because they want their results yesterday. And almost everybody thinks they're going to run it straight off. So if I need to lose 15 kilos, it's going to be done in 15 weeks. And then
also gonna slow down after some time, right? Because when you like your what is it called?
Metabolism.
Yeah, exactly. That slows down, right? If you're on diet, so your calorie deficit becomes less of a gap.
Yeah, definitely to a degree. What happens is each week that goes on, it gets a bit harder.
Yeah.
So basically, to lose 10 roughly, if you're using classical maths, each kilo is worth 7,700 calories. So if you want to lose 10 kilos, you're going to have to do a 70,000 undercut of movable food, And of course, if there's different things that affect your metabolic rate. So yes, if you're older, it's slightly slower. If your hormones mess, it's slightly slower, but everyone can still lose body fat. But the biggest thing is as you go on consecutively, your hunger does go up. The body will preserve its metabolic rate to a degree. I think that's slightly overcooked a little bit.
Really?
The biggest, the show The Biggest Loser, for the pros and cons of it, they did a lot of good medical research on it, and they had like the biggest loser who'd lost 150 kilos or something, and their base metabolic rate, I think, was 150 calories less at the end than the beginning.
That's not that much. Okay.
So it is less. So it is true, but it's not mentally less.
Change.
You know what I'm saying? In that, so that's an interesting thought. So you are right, and what I find is there's a difference between different people, so that some people do drop a lot. So basically what happens is, if I need 2,000 calories a day and I undereat, it's going to bring it down because the body's not stupid. And the more you bring it down without feeding it, the bigger it'll drop. Because if there was a famine now in Britain, why would it have me burning 2,000 calories a day for 2 months and just dying? It would say, cut it down. It would say, and what it does is, and this is some of the signals you get back is, first thing it'll do is drop you, your temperature will go down. So you feel cold a lot more. And they could say, I'm not going to heat him up to 37 degrees. What a waste of energy. I'll put him up to 36.2 and he can put a jumper on or something, And when I've done my 5-day fasts, because I think the hardest thing I've done was my first bodybuilding show was when I was on 35,000 steps a day. I was eating hardly any food. And
35,000, what is that, 20 kilometers? That's
over 20 kilometers.
That's a lot of distance.
I was totally shredded. You can see the photos on the Instagram and that. But the point was, that was the hardest thing, because some days I didn't have the energy to walk up the stairs. Well, I learned about energy being fake as well as hunger. I couldn't walk up I'm not going to get up the stairs. And then an hour later, I'd be quite full of energy, running with a client or something. It would come in, but the lows would be low, So basically that really taught me to disconnect through, hunger. You could ignore it quite easily because, again, it's what you do for the sacrifice of the pointless goal of being on a bodybuilding stage, But when I did the 5-day fasts, so no, just water for 5 days only, it wasn't really the hunger that got me because I was used to it, but the body temperature, that was what really got me. I was so cold. I'd be in fully clothed in bed, shivering, and because the body's you're not eating, mate. I'm just going to drop your temperature down and you can deal with it, So it was quite a fun.
The other side of weight loss, so of course, you can lose weight through doing exercise and dieting. That's become very popular in the past few years, is Ozempic and Mounjaro and other anti-diabetes medicines. What do you think of that?
It's here to stay. I think I got about probably 20% of clients are probably on these injections and so forth. For me, it's just a tool, and I'm all for tools that work. If we agree on the long-term thing, which is, get to your goal, not be taking medication for the rest of your life. If we agree on that, then I think there's a role to play for some people. But I think people are sort of missing some of the elements there. One element is, straight up, it doesn't work at all on 15% of people. So so that means literally they take it and they don't even notice they're on it. The hunger's the same, nothing's the same. And also you can get some negative fat. I had just one lady recently, she was losing weight quite nicely. She went on the injections and okay, fine. And then she was dizzy and sick and she had to come back.
Yeah, the side effects that come with it, right.
So that's not great. But what I found the biggest thing because I've seen basically a big range of clients. Some clients, I'm sure you know them too, have lost, people have lost loads of body fat. Some have struggled. And the ones who get the biggest thing is people that get a hangover from overeating. So basically what should happen is, you're on the thing, you're not feeling hungry, but then one day, as we talked already, you don't eat just for hunger. You go, oh, right, I'll forget it. I'm just going to eat. Bad day. You have a drink. And then some people wake up the next day that they've had or they feel like death afterwards. They feel hunger. It's a bit like, if you ever get drunk on, say, I did once on whiskey, I can never drink it ever again. It's that sort of thing. Yes. Those people actually get really good results because...
Oh, they get good results?
Yeah, because what happens is...
Didn't expect you to go with that.
At some point, you think, oh, forget it, I can't bother. Then you eat this, and then you get this... So then you're now scared to overeat and you've got less hunger. The ones who don't get that, I've seen get sort of okay results depending on how they sort of go, So I think that's a big element of it, is this hangover or whatever effect to it. It makes sense really. It's like the carrot and the stick at the same time.
Yeah. I know a lot of people who are on this weight loss medication. And I was in Japan in January with pretty much my whole family. And Japan has so much exciting food. And exactly this thing has happened. The people that were on this medication the next day just get the worst like hangover. It's exactly how you describe it, right? It's this hangover, horrible feeling, never wanting to eat anything in your life again from just eating regular lunch, like not some kind of unlimited all-you-can-eat buffet, but just having like, I don't know, 1,700 calories in one sitting. A lot, but not crazy. And how does do you know many people that got off it? What are the results with that? Because if you don't have hunger and you don't eating, and then your environment doesn't change, but your hunger comes back.
Well, this I think some of the issues like with the thing is just rapid fat loss. Like a lot of the regain rates right now are not looking great. Like one study came out recently that showed they gain like 0.8 kilos a month. So if you lose 12 kilos, that means you come off it 1 year later, you're back to where you started. Now, that's not great. But then, of course, if you lost 40 kilos in that year and you gain, that's probably okay. So it's, there is that element. And like I say, if anybody loses weight quickly, whether you do it through, jabs, whether you do it just through motivation for a wedding, bodybuilding show, you are hungry when you finish. And it's not because you lost 2 kilos, it's because you've lost 10 kilos or 20 kilos. Yeah. And you have to be able to navigate that bit there, which I don't think people always navigate it quite so well. So some of the regain rates, off because of that. Obviously, there was muscle being lost during it. The studies are showing that too. So that's why they recommend you should be weight training when you're doing these things. So that's not looking great in that sense. But then a lot of people aren't able to lose weight in any other way. But I feel like this is sort of a new thing. It's a tool, but you still need to do the stuff that person who wasn't using that tool should do. So
such as what?
Well, one of the other interesting things is, it's like you got emotional states. I'm in a good mood, a bad mood. You don't ask for your boss for a day off on a bad mood because it might go wrong. We've also got like hunger states. How do I act when I'm hungry and around food? And obviously when you take these jabs, the food noise, as they call it, goes down. Your emotional hunger state, you're not in that state.
Define food noise.
So noise is like thinking about food. You think about food, you've got a bit of craving, thinking about, like you're just sort of food orientated. You know? So the people who, a lot of people have this and they struggle. A lot of people don't think about it. They think, oh, have I eaten today? Oh, no. Oh, I should eat. You know what I mean? Like, it comes in one quick, but a lot of people who are doing good off these results, they are sort of food noise. And they take these jabs and they're like, I haven't even thought about food today. I didn't even think about food. So basically when they get this signal, they're responding in their brain is firing it sort of up in that sense. And what happens is they basically avoided, it's a little bit like saying, I've given up drink, but I'm not going to see any of my drinking friends for 3 months. And you're like, I'm such a non-drinker. And then you're like, right, you're coming to John's birthday, and then you go there, you're like, oh, better have a drink, innit? Yeah. You haven't actually learned not to drink around your mates, you know what I'm saying? Yep. So the point would be, if you want to literally be a non-drinker long term, you've got to at some point learn to not. And what happens is that's not a nutritional craving. That is a social craving, an awkward craving, a pressure craving. Like you watch something that's cringe on the telly, you're like, oh, no.
Yes.
That's an awkward feeling, that is. That's not anything, physiological, as in biochemical, what I'm saying? So I think a lot of people on their jabs are missing that training part. So they're not actually any different around food. Now, there's no doubt that some people are hungrier than others, but also you can look at then, can I change my food? A lot of people had like their food plan is wrong. I said, early on, plans aren't so important, but I've seen plenty of people who literally you change the plan and their food cravings go greatly down in the same way that the jabs are having that effect. So I think they need to learn those elements, and you can't take out those behavioral elements because they are not nutritional based. They are, cravings based. They are society based. They, social pressure. How do you react when somebody's offering you food? And so I think if people went through these processes, then I think the jabs would have much better sustaining rates. You know what I'm saying?
So if we're to do like a 5 bullet points of what to think about when someone's on this jab. So one of them is probably to continue exercising, like you said.
Weight training, get weight training, resistance. Yeah.
The other one is to be cautious about the whole, like you said, the environment, the analogy with if you have friends that are drinking and you're not seeing them, translating that into Ozempic is if you're around food, like your relationship with it and so on.
Yeah, I would say you haven't probably addressed some of the elements of your relationship is what I would say. And that's not criticism. That's just where you've sort of been at, And also, be careful with the Ozempic that you don't put all the blame on. A lot of people now, they don't believe they can lose weight without jabs. And I'm like, people didn't have jabs a few years ago and they were losing weight all the time. Do you know what I'm saying? And then they think they can't lose it unless they're on the jabs. And you're like, that's not necessarily true neither. You know what I'm saying? So then you farmed out your willpower. Because there's a famous study in like bodybuilding. They've had people taking steroids, and then one group had no steroids, one group had steroids, and then one had placebo steroids, and the placebo steroid group got 2/3 of the gains of the actual steroid group. Because what happens when you take steroids, like you train hard, you put more oomph into every set, you eat probably better, you probably went, like you're doing a lot of the stuff you're meant to be doing.
Absolutely.
My client just had a client now, he lost 18 kilos on the jabs. But now when he takes the jabs, he does like 20,000 steps a day. He runs through it. I'm like, that's good behavior to do if you weren't taking it. You know what I mean? So like, I think sometimes people overestimate how much is on those sort of jabs in that sense.
Once again, placebo is showing really great results.
Oh, it's huge, yeah.
But imagine it does make sense. Like if you're taking steroids and you're making the health sacrifice, then you feel that the social cost of not working out, if you're already doing something bad for your body, is so much greater than if there's no cost to not working out.
I think it's good. That must come. Yeah, and same with like men. I used to do like hormone tests and stuff, but I felt I gave it up, and then it was a bit out of your scope of what you're allowed to do. But like people would really respond well to like a medical data. That test says bad. Okay, right, I'm doing something. It's like a very motivational tool. Same thing with like if you're taking, as you still say, if you're taking steroids, then you need to take it serious. There's one online coach, he gets a lot of his clients to take steroids, but he gets such amazing results. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could get those results. But like when you take them, he's like, you can't mess, and this is the sort of thing, you're like, you can't mess this up. You can't, and people are really on that sort of plan. And then of course they get, they get great results in the photos. I think some people can get caught up in the photo. I've trained a couple of people who are on other people's, testimonial photos. I'm like, well, here they are training with me a few years later. Like that. Again, that's why I'm about the 5-year sustaining rate rather than that sort of thing here. And I think back to the jabs. It's it can be a great tool. So no one cares how you got there. If you took the jabs for 4 months, lost 16 kilos, and then took them for 2 months, and you came off the thing and you retrained it, and you're still there 3 years later, brilliant.
How long do you think is a healthy amount to take jabs for?
What I'd like people to do, which nobody ever seems to do, is what I said earlier on. But the lady lost, the 50 kilos.
Yeah.
Well, you'd lose a bit, chill out, lose a bit, chill out. You don't have to do it in 20 weeks. If you've got, and people don't do this, but this is what they should be doing. They say, right, I'm going to lose 8 kilos. I'm going to chill here. Maybe I'll come off them and then sit. That would be a very nice way. I think if people did that, it would be like a lot better sustaining rates. I remember one year I was losing. For a bodybuilding show, I wanted to lose 10 kilos to get ready for the pre-prep. And after 7 weeks, I'd lost 5 kilos. And I was just like, talking about listening to your body, I was like, I just can't be bothered. And then I gave up, took a month off, started again, lost another 5 kilos. And I lost those 10 kilos in 18 weeks. And honestly, it was super easy. And if I'd done it in, straight 14 weeks, I bet I would have cracked. I probably would have put it back on, and I was listening to my body saying, I need a break.
But when you're taking those breaks, isn't there a risk that you're just going to go very quickly back to square one if there isn't like enough space between? Yeah,
well, this is the question is, when you finish, do you go to break even? And if you go to break even, food wise, you're going to stay exactly where you are, A lot of people don't. This is why another thing I don't really like of the wedding people, they do this crash diet. Then, of course, they're on honeymoon, aren't they? So then it's
exactly.
So it's like, I've had a few people get their lowest weight at the airport and then they're off. And then you're like, okay, So the idea is if you do it right, no, you shouldn't regain it back up. I think it's a slight difference conversation. Obviously, part of bodybuilding, when you get to like your sub-natural low levels for the shows, and you can see, if you don't realize where there's fat, you can see it in your elbow joint. There's your feet and hands look like skeleton. Your head's losing fat. You're like, when you get to the last bits of body fat, you realize there's a lot of fat in all sorts of places you don't sort of realize.
Wow.
So then when you finish it, but it's funny, like the first year I did 2 shows. And they one show 1 week, then one show in a different category a week later. Yeah. And then it's funny because after the first show, I could easily stop myself eating. And then after the second show, I couldn't stop myself eating, and you're like, that's the psychological thing. And normal people get this all the time. Well, I'm sticking to the plan, had an argument with my boss, right, forget it. You know what I mean? Like it's that emotional sort of break that sort of gets you off in that sort of sense. So, but anyway, so back to the sort of the weight loss. If you could come in patterns, it's a skill to finish fat lossing and breaking even. That is a skill to learn. What does that feel like? What does that do? And longer term, it's quite nice if you can keep some of the patterns that, because one of the big issues you get is, let's say you get to your goal. Well, I was 90, now I'm 70. Well done, brilliant. how do I stay there longer term? Now, what a lot of people do is think, well, I've got there. That's it. Bring out the chips.
Yes,
I'm done.
yes, yes,
I've
yes.
retired, fat loss. I am now the winner. And you're like, hold up, my friend. But the
You're
idea
gonna go
is...
back. If you do it, you're going to immediately lose it all. Yeah.
So the point, what you want though is to have a repeatable structure, because you're
Right.
going to have to do fat loss again to whatever you gain, you're going to need to lose. So let's just say I get to 70 kilos. And then after Christmas, I'm at 72. Well, it's easy. January, lose those 2 and you're 70 again. And this is real life at the end sort of goal. So the idea then is, do you have a repeatable formula that you can work? Oh, when I lose fat, I do whatever, fasting 2 days a week. I do this many steps. I don't eat this food, or I do eat this food. You've got a formula that you can do that's quite easy.
Repeatable formula. I like that. That's
so
a good
you know
lens
what
to look through.
Because fat loss is very predictable. Like, when you actually stick to things, really well, it's quite predictable. If you put down movement as roughly as steps, you use that as an equation. Most people aren't very good at counting calories, but if you count calories like strictly, you'll see it's very predictable and it doesn't change that much. Now, of course, real life doesn't make it predictable. Counting calories is quite hard if you're not eating like packaged things, you know what I mean? But it's not, everyone thinks it's this big mystery. It's not really the big mystery. The problem we get is people's perceptions of what they think is what changes. So I had a client, online guy, and he lost like 26 kilos, I think. And he's like, oh, it's funny, man, because if you asked me on day one, I'd already said I move quite a lot and I don't eat much. And now 26 kilos later, he's like, you know what? I realized I hardly ever moved and I ate loads. But like, that's a perception issue. And what's happening is, because we're moving less and less and less, it's getting harder to sort of work out what normal is. Obviously, like, the change was very quick. Nobody worked at home really 5 years ago, 6 years ago, before lockdown. Now hardly anybody works 5 days a week in the office. Like banks are 4 days a week very often. So that, and people, how much like movement has taken out here in London of people's commutes. Their worst days are their home days. And I'm like, look at your steps. You've done 2,000 steps. You think it would free up time, but it hasn't. It just means you start earlier and finish later. And what you can do, like, I used to tell people, just commute to your house, walk out, come back to your house and start work, But
then you need systems or habits to actually make you do things, because you'll do it once when your coach tells you to, but doing it on your own will, not very sustainable, right?
Definitely the thing. And this is what I try to do with walks. So basically, to your point, some element of habit is, just hitting the steps each day, but there's a sort of inverse relationship, or proportional relationship. The most steps you can do in a day without getting tired is sort of tied to how many least steps you'll do in a day. So basically, some people, when they start, they're knackered on 12,000 steps, and they literally, their feet feel tired. People don't respect walking as endurance because it's not fitness. You're not like, but people get knackered. Their feet hurt, their knees hurt. And if you get that 12,000 to 25,000 before you feel tired, what you'll naturally find is your body sort of gets you to go out. So you get to 4 in the afternoon, you're on 2,000 steps, your body's like,
cool, I want some movement.
So then you start doing things. But also we got tools you can use. You can buy walking pads now. You can have them under a desk while you're on a Zoom call walking.
But that really, I feel like I don't like working out from home, even though I frequently do, but I definitely like to mix in exercises outside of home. I feel like it's not very mentally stimulating. I feel like it's good to, maybe not so much from a body health point of view, but from a mind health point of view, I think it's great to do workouts outside in a different environment, get some fresh air, see something that's not your 4 walls that you live in between. So I really advocate for people to, whenever possible, not outsource. So not hoard everything at home. Because if you work from home, eat from home, have fun from home, and work out from home, then it doesn't have so many dimensions to your week.
Oh, no. I agree. Because you think, what's the power of exercise? Well, an element, as you say, is just getting out your house. If you just went out and sat on the sofa, you probably feel different. Because obviously, why do we, a lot of the times we're eating, is to change how we feel. Well, the body can get you to change. So let's just say if you change your environment, that's probably 20% of the exercise already, then if you get out of breath, that's probably another 50%, and this is why people, so on a changing how you feel sense early on to the conversation, I want to just feel good. You could just jump up and down in the house, but you miss out on that thing. But no, they're two slightly different things. One element is how much do I move every day? Well, if you say I'm working 10 hours a day, and you could do 2 of those hours while walking 3 kilometers an hour on a tread pad. You've just added 7,000 steps and you haven't created any magical time. But
I see what you mean.
That's not fitness. So I think there's a separation between fitness
okay, that makes sense
movement. Movement's about doing things. And I say, because our days have just expanded, it feels like we got no time. In the olden days, you used to walk the kids to school, you walked to work, you used to walk to the supermarket. Home delivery foods weren't really around 6 years ago. It's changed very quickly. So the point being, if you can double up, then that's great. For example, if you watch a TV show walking an hour on a treadmill, that's, you just walked 5 kilometers instead of watching telly, and you're still watching telly. So that's
I actually really like what you said about if you're working a 10-hour shift from home, you kind of multitask there. So that's trying to save things. But I'm with you. About exercise, I like the idea to get out of the house and things, but it's each to their own. Like a lot of people, especially when they start exercise early on in that conversation, who they've never exercised before, they don't want to go to the gym, most of them, because they don't know what the hell they're doing. So what if you started with a band workout, and you can get some really good workouts at home. Lockdown showed like nobody can do one arm push-up. So that means there's a long way to go for, using your own body weight and stuff. Yep. So it's each to their own in that sort of sense. There is no right or wrong answer, or maybe the point being is if you're a lot of this stuff like individual, right? Yeah,
but you talked earlier on about a lot of people don't want to do it. They're not that into the health and fitness. This is where we're trying to like multitask things here. So I'm going to meet 4 friends this weekend. Well, they all have to be dinner, lunch. Like, can you make one of those a walk?
Yeah.
And even though none of my friends want to, like, ask them. You'll be surprised how many. You know what I mean? So then it's like you're still meeting someone socially. Oh, I got to speak to someone on the phone. Can I go for a walk or on the phone? Well, that I had one lady here working. She was like quite high up, so I think she cut off half her Zoom calls, made them audio calls, and just walked around the park. And it's like, she's still, smart. You know what I mean? Like she couldn't do all the calls, Same thing with that walking, but if you're watching an episode, you might not watch your favorite ever TV episode while walking on the treadmill, but just a low, there's one guy, I don't know what he's watching, some Netflix thing, and he just started doing it on the bike, and he lost like 11 kilos in 9 weeks. So and all he was doing was watching this one, but it wasn't his favorite show ever. It was a show he's watching on Netflix. You know what I mean? So like you've multitasked things up. You've just made it a bit easier for you to, but the difference between movement though and fitness, movement takes more time. Fitness is the good thing about fitness is it doesn't take that long. You can like literally do a 10-minute blast session. That's going to get most people fitter.
That's a good distinction, movement and fitness. Yeah. So you can add movement to life, or you can add like a workout and fitness to life.
Yeah. But I think somebody got caught out on that though, because they add the workout, but then that's not enough movement. They're like, well, because basically, it's still ultimately an energetic calculator to change your body shape. So the problem is if I'm doing 3,000 steps and I do a blitz 15-minute workout, it's only the same as walking 40 minutes. It feels like you deserve great things. And obviously the energetic burn of like weight training is not that great. And again, one of the big things about weight training, people say, you gain muscle, it raises your metabolic rate. The data's quite depressing probably on how much it actually raises your metabolic rate. But what it does very good is it stops your body lowering its metabolic rate.
Okay.
When you talked before about, if you undereat, the body wants to bring it down. If you're doing weight training, it is quite good at saying, no, we're not going to drop it down by 500 calories. We'll drop it down by just a little bit or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's where I think the real tool of weight training is in a fat loss thing. And it preserves muscle tissue, obviously, as well in that respect. So, so that's what I'd say. Just they're two different things, movement and fitness. Fitness is easy because you just it's like a do thing. You know what I mean? Put it in the calendar, get a trainer, put it in the calendar, go to the class I enjoy, just do it here, and it also responds to, they're showing a lot of data now on like just integrated training. We're doing this podcast, we stop for 5 minutes, we do some squat jumps and push up, like that actually works. And people think, again, if you're going to go the top advice, it's the professional bodybuilders doing that, of course not, but they are.
Yeah, but they're dedicating their lives to it.
The average person is doing almost nothing. So then all of a sudden integrated strength thing, when you do this and you bench it, is quite a sort of good setup to have.
I think I read something about that if an average person takes the stairs rather than the elevator, they increase their movement by 30%. It was something like really impressive.
Yeah, I've always felt TFL should shut off the escalators and then make everyone do it. But of course, what would happen is nobody would use the escalators and people would have heart attacks, and then they would all have to turn them back on. But it's another plan, that and the schools. When I get in charge, that's what I'll be doing.
You wrote 3 books and you might write more in the future.
Yes, that's a plan.
How was it? Because I think writing a book is really fun. I would love to write one in the future. How long did it take you, and what pushed you to actually do it?
Well, I love writing. That's one thing. Well, my inspiration would be my granddad, who wrote like 14 books.
Really? Also in fitness?
No, he's like a bit of a pioneer in business marketing back in his day. And then when he retired, he wrote just books on random people I've never heard of, to be honest, in biographies. So, but so I think that helped a lot because he gave me some structure of what to be doing. Also, I think, talk about like, how things are successful, but like just seeing somebody who's written a book and you think, well, I know him. Well, he can do it. Well, I could probably do it then, isn't he? It's just one day I thought, I'm going to write a book. I need a book on, the rugby one came because there was no books on rugby fitness on the market. There was one from like 1988. And this was just when rugby had turned professional in the early 2000s, where basically if you wanted to get into it, you want to make it, you have to now be fit. You know, in the mid-90s, you could probably get away with it. And I was a very enthusiastic rugby player, but I didn't know what I was doing. I wasted years training and basically wasn't that good at rugby. So the point was, if only I had that book when I was 15. So I wrote that book for my 15-year-old self, you know. But
that's beautiful.
Yeah, so that was the idea behind the thing. I'm not involved so much in rugby. I've got a rugby fitness website, but it didn't really give me much. You talked about satisfaction earlier on. It didn't give me much satisfaction. I don't know. I like to sort of make a big change in someone's life. It didn't quite, you know, you like some clients, you don't. So anyway, I didn't stick to it, so to speak. But the writing the book process was great fun, I think, and I've learned a lot more writing the two others. But basically, there's two. The main thing I say is that, one, anybody can write a book. A lot of people don't think they can, but like, you kind of work out, you're trying to probably write it for one person. So who is that? Or a few people. Who am I writing it for? If you haven't got a person, it makes it a bit harder to do, you know, because...
So like in your case, it was writing to yourself at 15.
At 15, yeah.
Wow. The
other ones I'd be thinking, I think for the second one, probably to my mum would like struggle with health and fitness, trying to get the thoughts. The third one wasn't particularly, it was like to a typical client or whatever who's struggling, you know. So I've got a picture of who I'm writing it
So
to.
your first book is about training at rugby. Your second one
was called Change Your Thinking, Change Your Shape. So the idea was to get people to look at different beliefs slightly differently. What happened with the book was my friend was smoking, and I bought the Alan Carr, The Easy Way to Give Up Smoking.
Yeah, the best book on giving up smoking.
And she gave up smoking, and I thought, oh my Lord. And then I gave it to another one person. They gave up smoking, and I thought, I can't. I read that book. I've never smoked in my life. I read that book twice. Still never smoked. You know. But I just thought that's so it worked.
It'd be funny if it was like a switch where if you read it now you're a smoker.
So I just thought, how can a book be that? I thought I was just so impressed that a book could be that sort of powerful.
Yeah.
And you see, if you've read the book, you know it. Then he just destroys like every belief, or gives you a new perspective of every belief around smoking. Which
I haven't read it, but I just know so many people that read it and, like you said, quit smoking, and it works better than nicotine patches and all the other strategies, which essentially you're just circulating through different kinds of nicotine sources and don't actually end up quitting. But apparently with this one, right, since you read it, am I saying it correctly that it basically like makes you understand that you're not losing anything by quitting smoking?
Yeah, basically it shows that you are, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You get a good feeling from smoking because it's getting rid of your craving, but you've only got the craving because you started smoking. So, and then it just destroys every belief. Oh, one smoking here doesn't matter. I feel this or that. And it's just an amazing book for like doing that sort of thing. So I thought that was sort of some of the motivations behind that sort of thing. I was going to say something along but an interesting, just slight addict, come back to the book, Adjunct. He tried to write a book then on giving up on food, and there's been a few books. Basically, there's a different philosophy.
Sorry, who were writing?
Alan Carr he wrote a low carb, but it's funny. It doesn't the methodology of abstinence doesn't really work with food and fat loss. So basically, there's no reason for me to ever smoke again. No reason. I never need to drink again. I never need to take drugs again. Like they are very. You can give them up. Ciao. See you later. Food,
it's different. You need it.
Always here. It's a natural impulse. And for some of the books I read on like sexual addiction, I thought were much more applicable to food than the abstinence, because the abstinence doesn't work. I'm going to be hungry tomorrow. What am I going to do about it? Yeah. Same thing. Most people can get a sexual urge. What am I going to do about it? And this is and then it's about basically in the sexual urges book, it's about trying to identify like trigger patterns that go wrong. What are you defining as okay to bad? And it's very similar to sort of food. So it's like, I'm going to be hungry later. Well, what would be wrong? How do I respond when I'm going off the track? And I think that's an important point to note, because a lot of people are using abstinence methods with food, and it's not going to work because you need to, it's not like alcohol. It doesn't work like that. So it's interesting that the Alan Carr book, when I read his food book, I was expecting, okay, that'll be good. And it wasn't, and it didn't hit the sort of the money on that. But basically you have to preach, you end up preaching a, food approach, but it's not the same. That model doesn't work. And that obviously that links a little bit into, the addiction models per se, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, so it's an interesting thought that.
And then if we talk about the books that you were writing, how long did it take you to write each one of them?
The first one, I was with a real publisher. Then by 2011, like self-publishing was very easy. So I went self-publishing. Well, I wrote it like a maniac. I was like a madman. I used to get up every Saturday morning, 6 hours, 6 a.m. to like midday-ish. Same on Sunday morning. I think I read it very quick. I can type quite quickly when I'm going. I got 100,000 words done in like 3 months. I can go like 1,500 words an hour when I'm like in the moment. But then it took me about a year to edit that 100,000 down to 60,000 words. And that
of course.
And that was the worst part I've ever done. So I learned for the third book, I was a lot more, this is what I would like advise, people now about. there's two elements to it. First of all, I just structure in a time to write, and I would just say, right, whatever, Saturday 2 till 5 o'clock, I'm there, and then you got two things. You're either planning or you're writing, and they're not always like, you don't know what mood you're going to be in. So basically you want to this is for non-fiction, by the way. I don't know how to write fiction. You're writing to that person, you're setting out the structures, the substructures. And the better that plan is, that actual writing bit becomes very easy. Yeah. But other days, you can't really be bothered planning. So you just write a paragraph. You go, this paragraph's going somewhere. And you just write that. Well, you don't write with hand, you type. And then with those things, you're sort of making progress along the things. But one of the things I really learned was about productivity. So like I learned in the end, I used to block out, Saturday afternoon or whatever. And if I hadn't slept properly the night before, the last 2 nights, I might do like in 2 hours, maybe 20 minutes work, and it was absolutely pointless me being there. So like I worked out like whatever is your optimal production. Now of course I'm slightly different because I don't work in an office, so maybe you probably, if you've worked in offices, what makes you good at office work, but I found that was a huge thing. And then I would just get there and I have a plan, or I would write, and there's no right or wrongs. You need to find quite an inspiring environment. I felt I used to go to the British Library. I used to think, that's nice. There's been some famous people here and there. Yeah. I would also go to a Pret Cafe in Waterloo, and I would see weird people in there. I'd have music. There's no right or wrong. And then I would just fire the thing off, and then it was much better that last one because I knew a bit more what I was doing, and then the editing was a bit better, though there's still spelling errors if you see my book in it. But anyway, the point is, not there spelling, grammar errors, should I say. So that was it. I loved writing, so that was the main thing. But like I say, I think the key thing is really structuring it out beforehand. I've got a little document I send people and give you a copy if you want to write a book.
Thank you.
Because another thing you realize is like your chapter headers. Again, if you're going to go with public publisher, they do all this, but like your chapter titles, you can have like 25 pages of titles, so you need to have like the tense done and so forth. And then I think one of the great achievements was doing the audio book, because obviously once you've written the book, you can either get somebody to record it for you, it takes a big chunk of the profits, or you record it yourself. And then so I recorded it myself, which was hard work. This is fun chatting, but me and I was doing it. And then the worst bit was really killed was you have to, obviously you can get technology that does it, but you had to edit out each breath by hand. This was like 5 years ago.
Really?
So I'm just like, you got some silent copying.
I bet there's an AI that
there must be something that does it for you now. And then I was just watching the NFL playoffs, and I was just doing it for like time and time again.
Okay, I like the approach of mixing things with productivity, watching NFL and editing things, being on a treadmill and watching a TV
That was
series.
More keeping me alive, watching the NFL and just doing the copying, because obviously you don't need to listen, you can see where the sound bar thing, you know what I mean? So, but it did make a big difference on the time. Anyway, that was a lesson. If I do another one, I'll
have you enjoyed writing all three equally, or was the first one the best, or is it always that the last book you write is the the most interesting?
I like that feeling of like being in flow, you have running flow, whatever, just when you're in that mood, just doing that sort of thing. So I think I enjoyed all of those equally. I think it's just a good achievement. It really clarifies your thinking, when you have to write a book and you have to draw it in, it's just, you can't just sort of lie or bumble your way through. You're like, what am I actually trying to say here? And who am I trying to speak to, and so forth. So,
and who's that last book for? So the Grand Unified Theory of Body Transformation.
That was just for an average client. So I had a couple of clients in my head of their pictures, and this is what I would want them sort of to read, But then I slightly got missed up because some of them were then talking to other personal trainers. So the next book I'm going to do is going to more just have I want to do one more about the transformational journey. Now, whether it's mental health, fitness, or body, because the core of transformation is very similar. You got to obviously change something, and how do we do that? Do we have a vision of where we're trying to get to? And then it should be able to put it a bit more, applicable to each person, so they can just grab the section that they're looking for and have a base thing. So that's on my list. I just need to find time to sort of do it. And there's another book I want to write about just the journey and the story I've had of working with people for like 20 years, because you spend so much time one-on-one, you meet so many different clients, different types of people, just to give that experience. And I'd call it Tales from the Mat. That's what I'd be. So that could. You
mentioned that before we started recording. That sounds really exciting. Because like we said, if you spend a lot of time, if you're a personal trainer with clients, then very often you're one of the closest people in that person's life. You spend a lot of time talking to the person, and perhaps more than lots of people in the close family.
I think I was saying it's a unique position where you're like one of their good friends without being one of their friends, none of their other friends. So you're like, a confidant in that sense. But, especially like most guys don't go to therapy. So they got no one to talk to, about these things. And again, the environment where I work, because I work a lot outside or in people's homes, there's enough quietness around for the conversation to go anyway. You know, if you're in a gym, you're not really, you know, talking about this and so forth. And then, of course, because I spend a lot of time in people's lives, you see all sorts of stories of, you know, I love people's lives. I love people. You know, I think one of the things of being a personal trainer is if you don't love people, don't even bother, you know, because you spend a lot of time. And if you look at a lot of the, you know, celebrity trainers, they haven't trained people for decades, you know, they get out of that sort of thing. But so then you see people get married, divorced, go through these things, you know, and you get that sort of, you know, perspective. So then I can give a thing of, so the idea I have a chapter on bankers, I'd have a chapter on, you know, like sex workers. I've obviously trained like sex workers to cope with their body, you know, so escorts, strippers, and you see all sorts of these stories that you could make probably a good little book
for sure
on these list of things, you know.
Ben, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was so interesting and so much fun. I would love to do part 2. I feel like we can touch on so many other stuff, but I think I learned a lot of things today.
Great stuff. Thank you for having me. I look forward to coming back.
Before we click off, where can people find out about you? Where can people find your books? Talk about the things that, you can promote it a little.
All right. Well, Ben Wilson UK, all one word. That is, you'll get me on all the social medias there. Website, benwilsonuk.com. Check us out. Give us a follow. Send me a message. Tell me some fitness goals. I'll always get back to you. So that's what you can do.
Gorgeous. Amazing. Thank you for being on.
Oh, man. Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.